Don't Breathe is the new horror thriller from the same crew that brought us the remake of Evil Dead, and this time the basic plot is that there are these three young kids that are a little bit more down on their luck, and so they have to resort to robbing a bunch of houses in order to make their money. They one day find out that there's this old blind man, he has about $300,000 in his house is the scoop they get. They think it should be an easy job, and if they get in, get the money, and get out, then they can be set for life. But once they get in, find out the blind man's a lot more capable than they thought he was, and all of a sudden, they become the victims. And that is the premise that brings us an extremely effective thrill ride. I had so much fun in this movie. I went with one of my best friends. They spent about half the movie curled into a little ball in the seat next to me. I was gripping my armrest, and during about half the scenes, I didn't realize until they were over that I was holding my breath. Don't Breathe, the title, is brilliant because it applies to the audience just as much as it applies to the characters. Seriously, the performances and the sound design in this movie both do such an amazing job at really bringing us into the story. The sound design especially, so many moments of silence or the sounds they do use are all used perfectly to just wrap you up there. These moments where characters are just standing perfectly still while the blind man tries to listen for them, and you realize that you just as much as them are just trying not to make a peep, just sitting silent, tensed in your seat because you don't want to give them away. But there was one thing I really loved about this movie that I've never really noticed in a movie before. I'm sure other movies have done it well, but this was the first time it was really apparent to me, and that's that this movie uses its space very effectively. There's an incredible tracking shot at the beginning that takes you through the entire house. One shot, no cuts, and it takes you through everything to show you how each room connects to the next. And that leads to, throughout the movie, you know if one character is in danger, you know exactly where another character is in the house, or you know about how long it's going to take the blind man to get to them if they give themselves away. There's an incredible scene where I won't spoil it, but they end up kind of giving away their location, and the blind man's on his way to where they are. And you know, because you know the layout of the house, about how long it's going to take him to get there. And so you're terrified knowing they only have so long before he gets to them to be able to complete something. I won't tell you what it is. And it's just such an effective way to pull you into the movie. It makes it that much more realistic when you know where everyone is and what exactly is going on because you know the house and you feel like you're there part of it because you know about as much as the characters do. I will say at the end of this movie, it kind of seemed to start to drag on maybe 10, 15 minutes too long. There's an important thing that happens, and I felt like if it had wrapped up quicker after that important moment, it would have made it a lot more effective, a little cut down the runtime just a little bit. And it seems to go on. There's one scene at the end that's maybe 45 seconds or a minute long that they tack on at the very end of the movie that for me seemed incredibly unnecessary. I guess they just felt they couldn't leave a certain plot point without wrapping it up, and I just feel like that was a mistake. I feel like they could have ended it 45 seconds earlier. We could have inferred the information that was put in that scene, and it would have been a lot more effective. The thing about horror movies is once the scares are over, you can kind of cut it off. You don't have to have a part at the end where you wrap up all their storylines. You cut it off when the terror is over. And so I feel like they could have cut it off just a little bit earlier, but that's just a minor complaint. Overall, I had a ton of fun with this movie. I can't wait to go see it again, and I will say that Don't Breathe is definitely worth adding to the collection. If you're a little confused about that, I did redo my channel a little bit. I was tired of doing the 5-point rating system just because when I would talk to people about movies, I would give them my points, but then they would always seem to be just more interested in whether they should go see it in theaters or rent it later, so I decided to just be a little more straightforward, and I'm just going to tell you the way I think you should watch the movie, whether you should add it to the collection and buy it on Blu-ray, go see it in the theater, rent it, or just give it a complete pass altogether. Those are kind of the ratings I'm going to use unless I have something else I want to say. I'm just going to be more straightforward with my rating being how I think you should watch the movie, and I think that's going to be a little more effective. But for now, if you've seen Don't Breathe, I want to hear what you thought in the comments. I want to hear your opinion, because that was just my opinion, for what it's worth.